Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Bay Area Content Marketing Meetup. This is a little bit of a meta meetup in that we're gathering at our meetup to talk about meetups. So for some background, this is a talk that Rich and I gave at the Content Marketing World Virtual this year, which kicked off in October, and it's still live for those. It's a paid event. So if you paid for a ticket, you can go in and access a lot of on-demand content like this session. And the background is I attended Content Marketing World in Cleveland in 2019. I was talking up this meetup, our group, and I was getting a lot of questions about, and I did a little bit of a side talk last year in Cleveland. It wasn't about meetups, but it was about building community. And I got a lot of questions about do you have tips for me on launching my own meetup? So Rich and I were inspired to submit this for the Content Marketing World 2020. We were accepted. Luckily we hadn't booked our airfare yet, but we were ready to present this in Cleveland. Then, as we all know, the pandemic hit, shelter in place took hold. Our meetups, as we're doing right now, shifted to online, and Content Marketing World shifted to online. So we're going to go through. So there's two ways you might be able to enjoy or appreciate today's talk. One is if you are looking to launch your own meetup. That was the premise behind this talk. Of course, these days it might be less likely that you're looking to gather people in person right now, but I still think it's a great time to gather people online like we're doing. The second way is if you're either a longtime member of this meetup or maybe a new member. This kind of tells you the story of how we came to be. So hopefully one of those two ways you can enjoy this, or maybe both. Let us get started. Actually, Rich, do you want to say hello?
Hello. So it is somewhat meta. I think of the old, and this will date me, Seinfeld episode where Kramer has developed a coffee table book about coffee tables. And he goes on Regis and Kathy Lee, and the book folds into a coffee table. Anyway, yeah, welcome. Look at me with champagne. Dennis, you want to talk to slide one here?
Yes. So speaking of which, if you don't know Rich, he's pictured here. The story of this photo is Caroline had a birthday. This is in our original location in San Mateo, California. And I think it was literally Caroline's birthday. Rich arrived early. Right? Day of, yeah, I believe so. Rich arrived early with some champagne and a nice fruit cake and a nice floral arrangement. Luckily, I think Caroline came 5 or 10 minutes. Like, she wasn't there when we all arrived.
And she had no idea.
She had no idea. So we gathered together. Rich got this set up, and somehow somebody knew that she was coming in. And when she walked in, we said surprise, and we sang her happy birthday, ate some cake, and shared some bubbly.
She still hasn't forgiven us for any of this.
Because Rich was like, where are you? You're late. And I'm like, I'm always late. What's the problem? It was like, it was nice.
So that is one example of what we call the magic of meetups. So the point here is that, so for those of you who don't know, we were founded in 2015. So we're past our 5-year anniversary and going on in the midst of our 6th year. I never knew that we'd come this far. I just wanted to gather people together. And it's just so many magical things have happened. I knew Rich casually before we started this meetup. Actually, we'll talk about a meetup that Rich had previously founded. But we've really developed a great friendship over the years as a result of this meetup. A lot of you who are watching right now, I've developed stronger friendships with you, or friendships I would have otherwise not had. So it's just been amazing to develop lifelong friendships. In addition, lifelong learning. So we always try to have an expert speak at our meetups, so you can learn a lot from the experts we've had. I've seen people, so I mentioned the friendships I've been able to make. I've seen other friendships emerge that have been so special to watch. I've seen people refer people they just met to maybe a job opportunity at their company, or a job opportunity at a company they know someone at. So I've seen people land new jobs and land new clients as a result of gathering. We'll talk about this a little bit later. We've had visitors from Kazakhstan and Japan, it just blows me away. We had our local Congresswoman, Jackie Spear, visit us. As we said, we've celebrated birthdays, lots of smiles, laughs, and hugs when it was safe to hug. And now we'll talk about this as well. We are able to connect with marketers across the globe. So we put this talk together with a list of, I believe, 8 tips. So this is really geared towards people that are inspired to launch their own meetup. Tip number 1 is 2-part. Number 1 is find your spark, and the second part of that is find your why. So the story with this meetup is that it started from an idea or a meetup that Rich had. You'll see this tweet. I think this was from like 2012. Rich tweeted a photo from Christina Halverson's book, Content Strategy for the Web, where it literally says, go start a meetup. And so Rich was inspired. You'll see this photo here. Rich was inspired to start his own meetup. This would be in 2015. The Tide House Cafe and Brewery, which sadly has closed. It was located in Mountain View, California. And shout out to Laurie Kretschmar. Laurie is a mutual friend, and she literally introduced me and Rich on Twitter, where she like tagged each of us and said, you guys should get to know each other. So we started tweeting at each other and interacting on Twitter. And then when Rich launched this meetup in 2015, I said I need to go check out Rich's meetup. It was a group of content strategists, and believe it or not, there's also a connection to Content Marketing Institute, because it was at a meeting in San Francisco, an educational gathering that Content Marketing Institute did, that afterwards, Rich and 2 other content strategists were inspired to start this meetup. So my spark was that I attended a couple of Rich's meetups in Mountain View, and I said, I think I want to try this myself. So I wanted to start my own meetup. That was my spark, and I wanted it close to home. So San Mateo, for those of you who don't know, is roughly 15, 20 minutes away from Mountain View. San Mateo is where I live. So I decided to launch a meetup in San Mateo.
But back then in traffic, it could be an hour. Like,
that's true.
I mean, there's a reason we want to be closer to home. Anyway, go ahead.
That's right. Yeah, for those of you who are not local, I live near a highway called 280, and I had to take 101 to get to Mountain View. And you never want to go to on 101 back in the day during rush hour.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I did was I wanted to start a meetup in my town, but I didn't want to like if I did an exact same topic as Rich, it would have been kind of like, it would have been too close. So I decided I want to do something on blogging. So here is a handy mission statement that says why you should exist. So this gets into the second part, which is you need to have a spark of inspiration, but you also need to know, why are you even creating a meetup together to get people together? So it's really simple. I want to gather certain type of people to do some activities in order to achieve some result. This was the version 1 of our mission statement. It was, I want to gather B2B bloggers to connect, learn, and share food in order to build connections and become better bloggers. Those of you who were around long enough, I believe Rosemary and Jeff remember this. Our group was called the San Mateo B2B Bloggers Meetup. That has some challenges. Number 1, that's very, very niche. In fact, I might have been the only B2B blogger in San Mateo. So we were talking to an audience of 1. We had some feedback over time. We probably existed with that name for at least a year. We decided to broaden our mission. So this is version 2. Version 2 is always better than version 1. Basically, we changed B2B bloggers to content marketers, and the rest remained the same. And we renamed to the Bay Area Content Marketing Meetup. So here's the mission statement, which still holds true today, 4 to 5 years later. We want to gather content marketers to connect, learn, and share food, and build connections to become better marketers. I would actually argue, like, this talk today is about meetups, so we are really talking more about marketing as a discipline rather than content marketing, even though we do have a lot of sessions on content marketing. So we could technically rebrand again, perhaps, to the Bay Area Marketing Meetup.
Well, with the pandemic, you have to provide your own food.
That's right, bring your own. Okay. The next tip is, again, this is geared towards people who are looking to start their own meetup is the fact that a meetup is a great outreach vehicle. It's similar to if you hosted your own popular podcast, and you can go out and make new connections and say, hey, would you be interested in presenting to our meetup group? So on the left, most of you probably know of Joe Pulizzi, founder of Content Marketing Institute. On the right is our local Congresswoman, Jackie Spear. The invite to them was, hey, do you want, well, obviously with Joe Pulizzi, we had developed a relationship over the years. And because of his interest in content marketing, he found that if you could go on mute, whoever's speaking, that he's a big supporter of our group. Congresswoman Spear, the short story there is our meetup originally was in San Mateo, California, in the office of my employer on Beauvais Road, and Congresswoman Spear's local office is in the same building. So I reached out to her staff, to her office, and asked if she would be interested in speaking to a group of marketers, and she said yes. Here's another example. So first of all, we have a Twitter handle for our meetup. It's content_meetup. Here's an example where Michelle Garrett, who's a good friend of our meetup, and she presented earlier this year. She was tweeting while attending one of our online meetups and tagged Doug Kessler and Rand Fish, two big movers and shakers in the marketing world. And they replied. I then replied back. So this is an example of using your meetup as outreach, and said, we'd love to have you talk to us sometime. Doug Kessler, you see here, says, I'm in. And Doug presented to us a few months ago. Rand Fishkin, if you're listening, we're still waiting for you to come join and talk to our meetup group. We know you've launched Spark Turo. I think some of our members use your tool. So the invite, a standing invite, is out to you, Rand Fishkin.
And the only tweet Rand and I had is about Ashland, Oregon. And yet, Rand, get back to me, buddy. Come on.
Okay, so just as an example, as marketers, you probably have done outreach to other marketers to ask for something. So maybe it's, can you give me a quote for a blog post? Can you share my post? Now, one of these is different from all the others, which is, would you like to present to our meetup group? The reason this is valuable to the person, it's obviously valuable to the meetup because you're bringing an expert in to speak to your group. It's also valuable to the person you're asking because you're giving them access to your audience. Now, obviously, when we started, we were small. We were a handful of people. We've now grown to, believe it or not, on meetup.com, if you check out our group, we're over 1,000 members now. It's probably grown from 600 when the pandemic hit to 1,000. Easy answer is because now you can attend like you're all doing now online. And you're giving the presenter access to your audience, which can give them further acclaim. It could potentially give them potential business partners. It can even land them new clients or customers. So as you build a sizable audience, that audience is a great way to do outreach to people that you can invite to be a presenter at your meetup.
Is this me, I think?
This is you.
So it seems incongruent, right? Consistent, but mix it up. Well, we consistently meet. I feel like for a while, even in real life, Dennis, it was a couple times a month, but we kind of landed on monthly. But the format would change. Sometimes stand and deliver some slides. Sometimes a roundtable dialogue. Sometimes an ask me anything. I think on the right, the handshake, that was an ask me anything. Literally, like we'll throw some curveball questions at speakers. We did a kind of a lightning round on just fully job focused. What are you doing? What do you want to be doing? Who do you know? I think that was well attended. But one thing I want to mention also, these meetups can be highly therapeutic in the sense that my spouse doesn't necessarily want to hear about the content strategy, content marketing woes I have at work. I need a safe place with other marketers to kind of share and learn. And every day learn how much I don't yet know. We've never had a straight up vendor pitch. I don't hear about your product so much as, hey, do you have something that's applicable whether or not I buy your product? And next slide, Dennis, if you would. Rosemary did a wonderful, in terms of mixing up format, website makeover. And you kind of had to be brave to offer up your URL while she picked it apart. And at the time I was at VMware and said, don't look at our site right now. But that was useful, pragmatic, actionable, also demonstrated the value that her agency bring to clients. I mentioned that job networking, that's the photo on the right. And I kind of see my agenda on the whiteboard. This is the old DNN office. Who are you? What do you do? What do you want to be doing? Who do you know? And to watch some real world connections being made that would be helpful. Because again, that reason, the why, right? To spark joy, Marie Kondo, and start with why, Simon Sinek. Well, I want knowledge sharing, networking, and noshing. In this case, great networking. So mixing up those formats now in the time of Zoom, okay, we're all doing this on video, but we could do those different formats. I think Dennis has.
And if I remember correctly, so the Rosemary was, I think we called it 30-minute website makeovers, which was a great idea. And you had to submit your URL for your homepage in advance of the meetup. If I remember correctly, there was a couple of early stage companies like startups who had just very minimalist websites that submitted. Rosemary did a makeover for them, like she proposed some changes, and I believe they actually implemented them. So not only do we have great speakers, but our attendees can get free advice that they apply to their websites.
Is this me again? Sorry.
This is you again.
I just quick fact check, Dennis. I'm getting a text from somebody who wanted to join who said they need a passcode. There's no passcode to get in the Zoom, is there?
Well, it's there is a passcode, but it's embedded in the URL.
Okay.
So you just have to click on the URL. Yeah.
All right, I'll take care of it in a minute. In terms of adaptability and flexibility, of course, in the pandemic, we all have to, suddenly we're remote. This happened when we were still meeting in person, and we no longer had access to the DNN offices, actually former IDG InfoWorld offices right there in San Mateo, which goes back a ways, huh, Caroline? And I just having a bunch of caution, went to the site and left the old, paper directions to, hey, come over to Talent. And again, this was a meeting space in Redwood Shores near Oracle that we learned about and were able to use for free through the meetup, right? It was, forget the woman's name, Dennis, who helped. Noemi connected us there. And this is when we were still meeting, but things change. And I think one of the challenges when we were still meeting in person was, where are we going to meet? It was easy when DNN was a going concern. That segued to that meeting space in that office. Once that was gone, it was like, okay, now what? I think we met once at the Burlingame Library. My desire to always do it at breweries, most of them closed down after we met there, coincidentally. Also, it's not as conducive to, good dialogue when you're in, a crowded public space. So finding a place would be a challenge. And thanks for that text, Rosemary. I'll share that with him.
And by the way, everyone, look at this. Take a good look at this sign. Look how it's organized, the information on this sign. Can you not tell it was done by a content strategist?
It's the arrow that was.
There's also like a lot of structured fields. There's URLs. There's Twitter handles. It's just, it's beautiful.
I think it's too many CTAs though. 1-to-1 ratio, one landing page, one call to action. My bad.
There you go.
All right, back to you, Dennis.
Oh, this is still you, Rich, I believe.
It's me. Oh God, look at me. This is when we adapted to Zooms at noon, as I call them, Pacific time. And Dennis really has taken off with that, pushing toward 40 Zooms since mid-March. And to meet, in this case, the center two on the Brady Bunch grid, if you will. On the left is Esther from Italy. On the right is it John from London? James from London.
Yep.
And suddenly we're expanding. So, challenge in that being the extrovert, I'd love to see y'all in person, but opportunity, hey, virtual, we can meet even more people.
Why don't we take a quick pause if anyone if anyone has any questions or comments. If not, we will move on. All right, we're moving on. So the next tip is to take advantage of built-in audiences. As you all know, we're called the Bay Area Content Marketing Meetup. The reason the meetup is in the name is because we were launched on meetup.com. For those of you who don't know, myself and Rosemary on the site are listed as the organizer and I think assistant organizer. Organizers do have to pay a small subscription fee to access the services of meetup.com. So I think it's paid every 6 months, and it's really not much of a cost at all. One of the things Meetup provides, so you probably think of Meetup as the logistics, like I can publish a new Meetup, I can have it listed on pages like this, I can message members, I can collect contributions, all that stuff. In addition, one of the most valuable things that meetup.com provides is its audience of millions of users. So these are people like you who have signed up for a free account on Medium. Once you sign up for an account, you can search for based on your interests, and you can also join Meetup groups and then RSVP to events. I think Meetup, the business, meetup.com has smartly pivoted to making their service available for these online meetups. They, shortly as shelter in place took hold, I saw them add a important field to a Meetup listing, which is there's a check mark that says this is an online event, and then you put the URL, which if those of you attending right now know that when you signed up for this, you saw that information. When you clicked RSVP, it then revealed the Zoom link. So, but the main point is that meetup.com gave us a built-in audience. I mentioned we're over 1,000 members. I would estimate, let's call it 800 of those 1,000 members discovered us on meetup.com. The other 200 is probably Rich Schwerin himself doing outreach to colleagues and former colleagues.
Yeah. There is something to be said for leveraging critical mass gravity of an audience, right? I think when Caroline and I were at Oracle and you'd get some internal stakeholder who wants to launch something from scratch, better to leverage something that's already there. So being on Meetup, I guess you could go it alone, but you get that benefit of gravity.
Right. And there's trade-offs, like there's a discussion you could have on rented land versus owned land. So meetup.com is technically rented land because I, as the organizer, do not have access to all of your email addresses, at least on Meetup, meaning I can't download the member list and have the email addresses. I can only download your names and then like the bio you might have added to your profile. Meetup.com, it's in their interest as a business not to give me your email address, because if I had everyone's email address, I could potentially leave the platform. So it's built into their business model to not provide the email address. So this is a kind of a side note. I actually have a newsletter where part of the reason I launched my own newsletter was to promote our meetups, but to also have an owned audience, meaning I own and control my mailing list. Of course, you can opt out from the emails, but at least I then have your email address for my newsletter. And this is an amazing thing that can happen from the built-in audience. This is something I tweeted last year from Content Marketing World. On the left photo is 2 visitors from Kazakhstan. What happened was, this was back in our San Mateo location. They were visiting California from Kazakhstan. They probably were meetup.com members back home. They said, we don't have plans tonight. Let's go to meetup.com and search for the local area. So obviously this was back in-person gatherings where you could just search for your local area. They found our meetup. I'm not sure if they work in marketing, but maybe it just sounded interesting. Back then we had some pretty fancy food we were providing for $5. And they showed up. I wouldn't have known, like you see the gentleman's got an LA Dodgers cap. Sorry about that, Rich. You might have otherwise figured they were locals, but I just happened to ask them, where are you guys joining us from today, and they said Kazakhstan. And I said, what? So I had to grab a photo of that. On the right is a similar example of Satomi. She is a marketer. She lives in Tokyo. She was visiting California, went to meetup.com, searched for an event that night, found ours, and showed up. She's pictured with our speaker that night, Christine Crandall. So just, I mean, there's no way we could have found visitors from these countries without a built-in audience like meetup.com. Another tip, this is Andy Crestadina at Orbit Media Studios. If you don't read their blog or subscribe to the newsletter, I would recommend you do that. He's a prolific content creator around analytics, social media, digital marketing in general. He's had this wine and web meetup. They don't use the meetup.com platform. They've been in existence about double us. So they've been in existence for 10 years. Back when it was safe to do so, they'd have people in their Chicago-based web design agency. They'd have people in their large conference room for presentations. So similar style to ours. And they've actually landed business and hired employees as a result of their wine and web gatherings. And Andy's tip is that when you've got some movers and shakers who are visiting, of course, it's not currently happening right now, but back later when it's safer to do so for business travel, his tip is to invite people and create a meetup that aligns when they are in town. So he's had some big names like Ann Hanley and Ginny Dietrich and many others. And Ann and Ginny, we'd love to have you join us in the Bay Area when we are back together with pizza and in person. Back to you, Rich.
Yeah, so again, I gave a shout out to Jeff and Rosemary, not just for your sponsorship and ongoing support of the meetup, but Rosemary, for your assistance, I think from day one, even before I was involved. I think I missed the first couple meetups. It takes a village, right? If you're going to expand and keep your meetup going, boy, trying that alone could be a challenge, especially if you have a full-time job and family and life, right? So you might not know who will help you right away, but those folks might identify themselves over time. And we see, I think, if you look over the past 5 years, Dennis, kind of the usual suspects will attend. We love you, right? And then be careful, because we're going to ask you, like, how can you help? When will you present? Like Todd, when are you going to present? Right? If you haven't already, get on Dennis's list. So it's very there's grassroots in that. It's not just a solo effort, right? Let's next slide.
Oh, and this is me. I'm going to go back to this slide. So
yeah, something I missed.
For those of I want to mention something about Rich. It is probably once a week where I get a LinkedIn message from Rich, who is it's a multi-person message on LinkedIn. Rich says, "Hey, so and so, I'd like to introduce you to Dennis. You got to check out these meetups. The next one's happening on this date." So Rich single-handedly has been a huge evangelist for getting members to join our group. And so thank you for that, Rich. And Rich, do you want to tell us anything special about your Autodesk business card?
Yeah, so I don't know how many of you even have or use business cards anymore, right? Like, especially now in the pandemic. I used to put them in the fish bowls for free lunch drawings, but there was a field on the when I joined Autodesk 2.5 years ago, there was a field on the submission where you could put pretty much anything appropriate. So I added a link to the meetup. I think I had my LinkedIn and Twitter there as well, and that was a good conversation starter when I would have that to make the connection with someone. It's also useful to grow the community of like-minded folks who have a similar interest. And that was kind of a fun little addition to make.
So just to confirm, you had a link to our meetup group, right? Meetup.com/Bay Area Content Marketing.
Yeah, and
Yes.
the printer even included the little LinkedIn icon. So yeah,
Nice.
It's kind of fun. I'm just trying to see if I have one around here to hold up. I don't. Sorry, I haven't been using them as recently.
Yeah, Makes sense. This is actually our final tip, which is because we were founded as a content marketing meetup, it has helped me with great topic ideas for my content calendar. So one of the places where I write content is for a site called CMS Wire. And what better thing to do than take a presentation that was given, so you've got your topic already and you've got the expertise, so you're not really you're not coming up with the insights yourself, but you're writing about what the presenter spoke about. And this is even more meta, is that Rich spoke back in 2016 about content strategy. And so for this site, CMS Wire, I wrote a summary of Rich's talk, which was about the difference between content strategy and content marketing. So if you happen to be a content marketer who runs a meetup, you would certainly want to use the meetup itself as a way to fuel your content marketing, your content calendar. I think this is back to you, Rich.
Okay, so you're ready to start your own meetup. First, wherever you're located, there might actually be a meetup, right? And it might have critical mass and engagement. And so you might actually think, oh, I don't know, start my own. I'm gonna join this one and give it a try. Then get out the why. Well, why would I do this? What's in it for me? There's, again, something very meta about having a content marketing meetup, because it lends itself to content marketing opportunities. The number of additional content pieces that Dennis has been able to publish based on something that happened in the meetup, it's going to be very rewarding. That mission statement is really important. I like the way, Dennis, you formatted that. I've seen you do something similar, Dennis, for why you're on Twitter.
Yep.
In fact, if you could retweet that again, I'd like to see that, right?
Sure.
Identify who might help you. Volunteers or voluntold, those who volunteer or those who are voluntold. It takes a village, right? And then the logistics, number 5, really, my hat's off to you, Dennis, because to administer lining up speakers and dates and topics and to have some runway for that, that's a non-trivial amount of time. My short-lived meetup on content strategy in Mountain View, I think we did maybe 3 or 4. It just quickly didn't have the time invested to really make it take off. And when you started yours in San Mateo, I could practically walk there and not be way in Mountain View. Go with that. And then again, okay, you've got your meetup, you've got your reason, you've got your agenda, you've got some folks involved, then obviously create it and announce it and get it out there. Word of mouth it plays a big role here in launching your new meetup. Next slide.
And in closing, if you are out there right now or watching the on demand and you are looking to launch your own meetup, we'd love, and you have questions, or even if you don't have questions, we'd love to hear from you. So get in touch. The photo here was from, this is the SurveyMonkey members of the SurveyMonkey marketing team, along with Joe Pulizzi. This was our last in-person meetup. It was in the first week of March. We held it at Fieldwork Brewing. Joe said, hey, if it's beer and we can just schmooze, count me in. So Joe and his wife, Pam, actually flew out from Cleveland to join us. SurveyMonkey is in the building, like the wall behind them is, I think, part of the building that SurveyMonkey or SurveyMonkey's headquarters reside. So they all joined and got a chance to meet Joe. This frame that you see here was created by Rich and his daughter. And then we did also ask people to write quotes or messages, which was starting to be filled out around the edges. And what was my last point? Last point was a big thanks. So part of this meetup was so special for Joe to travel and visit us in person. And it was also with the help of Tom Trainer and the team at ARM Treasure Data, who helped support Joe's trip. So thank you, Tom, and thank you for your longtime participation and support of our group. Any closing thoughts, Rich?
No, I just want to thank everyone. bearing with us on this. I have been a little scattered. I've been trying to multitask, and while the other participant couldn't get in, I know it's not a password issue. Dennis, I'd say I'm also seeing we have some time for questions. There's a question from Dan on the chat. Do you want to field that? It's a question. Do you review presentations with presenters beforehand or trust that they'll be sufficient? Great question.
Yeah, good question, Dan. The answer is no. So it's a very trusting environment that we have at the meetup. I'll tell you one particular story that was a little unusual, or maybe I shouldn't go into too much detail, but it's no review. I mean, people will say, can you review these slides and give me feedback? In which case I'm more than willing, but otherwise we just let the presentation go. I probably will not get into details, but there was one time there was a presentation that was a little bit off topic and I didn't review it beforehand, and it really wasn't directly related to marketing. Yeah, it was a little bit uncomfortable, but you get some of those sometimes.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. It was just like, oh, we probably should have screened that. The one thing I talked earlier about different formats, mix it up. No straight up vendor pitches. Yes, we have had vendors come and present, but they've been really conscious of, I'm presenting, say, on account-based marketing. I happen to be an expert who works for demand-based, but I'm not giving you a product pitch on demand-based, because I'm not going to come to a meetup about that. So I don't think we've ever had a straight product pitch, Dennis.
No, well, it's interesting. When we were in person, I never wanted to do product pitches, but now that we moved to these regular onlines, I am inviting certain people to do just straight out product, not like a pitch where I'm selling you, but a demo. So we did have Jeff do a demo of Hushly. We had Tom do a demo, a little talk about customer data platforms. And some people actually ask for it, so that some people want to say, I would like to see a demo of this tool, and that's totally fine.
And that's the key word, demo. Happy to do a product demo, just don't give me the sales pitch.
Right, exactly.
Well, that makes sense. Thank you. By the way, in terms of the Zoom thing, I think it could be a Zoom update. I was prompted for one. I was already late, so I didn't do it, and now I can't start my video.
Oh, okay.
Darn Zoom. There you go.
So I run a meetup, but we haven't met since COVID and even a while before here in Portland, and it's a marketing automation meetup, and there happens to be a marketing automation company here that was a great sponsor.
Okay.
And so they did give a couple of presentations over the years, but one of them I was particularly kind of worried about. So I said, I'd like to see the presentation ahead of time, because I don't want it to be salesy. I don't want it to be all about your product. And they assured me it wasn't. And I saw the presentation, and they did a bait and switch and actually showed a different presentation. So that was actually the last time that they actually presented. They're still a good sponsor, but they lost their right to present.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah, tends to backfire.
Cecile, what'd you think? Any comments?
You've been to a lot of meetups, Cecile, with us over the years.
I think you were with us in year one, Cecile.
Yeah, I think, the mission to be able to get some knowledge, get out of the office, carve some time and learn from other people. I think that's the best way, you can continue to sharpen your skills. And I think I've learned so much. So I think the first reason I joined was really because I hired a content marketing person in my team at that time, 5 years ago. And I really wanted to learn a little bit more about content marketing in terms of, managing her and, putting the content marketing practice at the next level. And at the same time, I think for all of us right now, walk the talk, right? Walk the talk about content marketing. What is it about? How do you apply it? And learn from the best. So I think that's why I've enjoyed. And the thing you guys have done a tremendous job besides the logistic is just being authentic. And I think if we think about, content marketing at its best, it's because it's authentic, it's human, and it's also vulnerable. So the fact that, there's no high bar. It's just come as you are with the knowledge you can offer, and you'll get a ton out of it. I think that's just terrific. So thank you guys, and I continue to attend whenever I can, and I love the recordings also, Denise, because if we're not available, then at least we can catch up at our leisure time on YouTube, which I think is fantastic. And guess what? It's a really good content best practice, right?
Yeah.
So you get the best mileage out of the content.
Yeah.
So kudos, guys.
Well,
Thank you.
if I could thank you, Cecile, and Dennis, thanks as well. And yeah, thank you, especially for engaging and participating and sharing your knowledge. You know, I think true experts never describe themselves that way. They don't need to, like Joe, for example, Joe Pulizzi. And to have that growth mindset of the don't know mind of I don't yet know. And this is a space that changes so rapidly every day. The know-it-alls are, yeah, how dated is that information? Cecile, I'm going to ask you a question about Meetup, and I know that you're heavily involved in, well, it's formerly MoCA now, it's the Growth Ops community. Do you have a Meetup format with that group? I know you have the website and whatnot, but can you talk a little bit about the Growth Ops community and how that relates to Meetups?
Sure. So I think what you mentioned, at the beginning is the platform is just a platform. The reason you used Meetup at the beginning was because of the logistics. So you could really focus on the engagement with the community and the content. It happens that the platform was the right platform at that time because you wanted to organize physical events.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, we've moved more to Slack community. So we have our own private Slack channel, and probably also because right now with the pandemic, most of the conversation, the engagement take place online. I think it makes total sense for us to use Slack. So just, a little bit about the platform. So my sort of advice for people is the platform doesn't matter. What matters is your mission, what you want to achieve, and then you pick the platform. And you should pick a platform because then you don't have to focus on the logistics, but really focusing on the content. And then to go back to your question about what is Growth Ops, so the Growth Ops operations community is a community that get together sales, marketing, and customer success professionals toward what we're seeing a trend toward growth operation and or revenue operations, where you have to put the customer at the center of everything. You have to improve the customer experience, and the best way to do that is to bridge those sort of silos between the various teams and be really aligned together toward the same objective. So I think it's sort of a complement to the content meetup because guess what? There's a lot of content component to educate the community. And at the same time, when you work in marketing and content marketing, well, you probably have a lot of interaction with the department. So I think that pushes a little bit the boundaries in terms of how do I improve the customer experience. So to one of your comment in earlier slides is, there's a lot of communities that complement each other. You get a ton out of them. So just go where you can get the information you need, where you can grow and push the boundaries.
Very good. Thanks, Cecile.
Thank you, guys.
All right, I think that is a wrap on today's talk. It looks just for the rest of the year, there is another talk next a week from today. And I'm working on publishing a few more. So we'll have a few more in November and December before we end this crazy year.
Yeah.
So Rich, thanks for presenting with me, and thanks everyone for attending. If you can make it next week, come join us, or for the other meetups in November and December.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Cheers.
you, Denise. Thank you, Rich.
Good to see you guys.
Good to see you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.